Sustainable is Attainable, an initiative by Tata Power and News18 Network, has been at the forefront at chronicling India's clean energy transition journey. The initiative hosted a day-long festival, SIA Fest, to celebrate a clean energy future for all. The SIA Fest garnered support from policymakers, honoured champions of change who are driving behavioural change and promoting sustainable practices at the grassroots level. The initiative witnessed insightful conversations with industry leaders, ambassadors of countries and energy experts.
Collective action is possibly the only way to build a better tomorrow. And while we're on that subject, I would like to bring to your attention the lovingly handcrafted, vibrant cotton table runners that you all see on your tables over here. They're absolutely stunning, and they're made by the women collectives under Tata Power's Anokha Dhaga Community Development Initiative, which empowers more than 25,000 grassroots community women across 8 states. Take a look at these beautiful runners. They're stunning. Don't take them home. They are all mine. I've got dibs on them. You see, Anokha Dhaga acts as a sacred thread that binds together the sisterhood of women, uplifting livelihoods by building wonderful capacities and confidence while making them financially independent community champions. Please feel absolutely free to scan the QR code on your tent card on your tables to know so much more about Anokha Dhaga and, of course, support this growing movement of change and empowerment. And now it's time to also get down to business. As we welcome you all to join the movement at the Sustainable Is Attainable Fest, De Power Ko Green Signal. This one is going to be a fascinating virtual session to open your senses to a world of incredible possibilities. We have Pawlyn joining us from London today. Michael is the founder of Exploration Architecture Limited. He is a global thought leader in regenerative design and biomimetic architecture.
Biomimetic design is something which we've all familiar about or we've always been inspired. But how do we make it regenerative? How do we make it sustainable? That man on your screen, ladies and gentlemen, Pawlyn, is the one who's going to take us through that conversation. First up, Michael, how did you make the shift, or what inspired you to look at sustainable design architecture?
Because I was passionate about 3 things: design, biology, and the environment. And then some years later, when I started working on the Eden project, that was when I saw that there was a way to bring those 3 together in pursuit of sustainable architecture inspired by nature.
Talk us through and discuss some of your projects in regenerative design and how you've been able to achieve sustainability, energy efficiency goals.
Sure. Okay. Well, maybe a good one to start with would be a zero-waste textiles factory. We all know that textiles is really quite a water and energy-intensive industry. And so by using ideas from ecosystem models, we were able to look at all the different elements of the system and see how we could bring those together in ways that were synergistic. So looking at the output from one part of the system and seeing how that might be an input to another part of the system. And for that project, we involved a biologist, a chemist, and a water expert to help us develop the ideas. And by looking at all the elements that went into the process and designing out all the problematic inputs, we were then able to use biological forms of water treatment for all the outcoming water. And then by looking at all the resource flows of the machinery and processes, we were able to achieve really pretty substantial savings in energy. So we showed that we could get all the way to zero carbon with a payback period of about 5 or 6 years, as well as making a much better working environment for the people inside the factory.
The more important conversation that we're all having now is the role of design and architecture towards achieving this net zero targets that everybody is setting for themselves, the world is setting for itself. And how important is design? How important is architecture? What is the role in trying to achieve these goals?
The UK, about 40% of our emissions come from buildings. And then a further 25% comes from transport, and that's something that we can influence as well as architects, designers, urban designers. So there are big opportunities within the built environment to achieve really substantial savings. And one of the key differences really between sustainable and regenerative is that in sustainable design, there is a tendency to think that if we just make things a little bit better, then that's enough. And clearly, that's only enough if we've got above the line of neutrality, of having net zero impact. And actually, we need to do so much better than that. We need to get into the realm of having a net positive impact. And that for me is one of the key distinctions between sustainable and regenerative.
How would you compare, contrast, or highlight some of the challenges between regenerative design and also the traditional sustainability designs?
It doesn't have to cost more. So on the Eden project, that was a project in the UK. I think it is still the largest greenhouse in the world, and we took inspiration from a lot of biological structures, particularly spherical structures in nature, and that helped us to design the building in an incredibly efficient way. And we also explored the idea of very thin pressurized membranes as an alternative to glass. And again, that was inspired by biology. And the result was a building that cost about 1/3 of the cost of a more conventional approach that would have used glass and much heavier steel. There are some projects like the biomimetic office where it will cost a little bit more upfront, but there will then be massive benefits in the longer term. So it's much cheaper to run, and also it's much better for people's well-being and productivity.
Tell us a little more about the Sahara Forest project.
Sure, thank you. Well, the idea with the Sahara Forest project was to bring together a number of key technologies which had some interesting synergies between them. So the key ones are forms of solar energy, a type of greenhouse that was actually inspired by a fog-basking beetle. This is a beetle that has evolved a way of capturing its own water in a desert. And then the other core technology was approaches to desert revegetation. Now, when you bring those together, they're actually much more productive and efficient than they are separately. So we built a version of this in Qatar and another one in Jordan. And this allowed us to test all the aspects of the system. And in addition to those three technologies, we actually added in some other ones. And we showed that we could grow crops throughout the hot Qatar summer with half the amount of fresh water of conventional approaches. So the potential exists to grow crops with much less water, to produce a lot of renewable energy, and to revegetate deserts.
Now, how do we bring that into India? Now, if you talked about Jordan and Qatar, in terms of the desert systems, the Thar desert system in Rajasthan perhaps mirrors similar climate conditions, but Ladakh doesn't. Ladakh itself is a desert, but it's a different desert altogether. So is it possible to bring those and mirror that and adapt it to India?
Quite possibly. And I did look at the Thar desert, actually, and I'm aware that it has incredible solar potential. And if there were to be a source of salt water or seawater, then something like the Sahara Forest Project could be a very good solution. The key thing with biomimicry is to look at what solutions already exist in that place. And in most of the world's deserts, there are species of plants and animals that have evolved amazing ways to deal with that resource scarcity. In the case of a desert in India, say, if I were to be working on one of those, one of the first things I'd want to do is engage a local biologist or ecologist and really study what the amazing adaptations are that exist.
Let me ask you this. You started something called the Architects Declare. That was a solid movement where now I believe 6,000 companies across 26 countries are part of this. What is this entire cause?
Yes, sure. So in 2018, when the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change issued their latest report, which was the most worrying of the reports they'd ever issued, it showed that we're still a long way off a safe path for humanity. And so I embarked on two new collaborations. One was a co-authored book with a friend called Sarah Ichioka about this shift from sustainable to regenerative, and the other was Architects Declare. So both of these were inspired by the need to move beyond conventional sustainability into the realms of regenerative design. And we launched Architects Declare in the UK with some of the leading practices, and very soon we had a lot of other interest. So we had 200 firms signing up in the first 2 days. Wow. And then we deliberately made it as easy as possible for groups in other countries to set up their equivalent. And I'm very pleased to say that as you say, now we now have over 6,000 companies in 26 countries, all signed up to a declaration of action.
Michael, why should designers, architects, adopt regenerative design? What's in it for them?
Yes, sure. Well, that's a great question. And in the book that I mentioned, that I wrote with Sarah Ichioka, we actually mention Amitav Ghosh and his book, The Great Derangement. And he makes a really important point there, which is that it's not really the job of politicians to imagine new futures. That is the job of creative types. And architects and designers have the ability to imagine things that don't even exist yet, and to work with clients and teams to lead them into actually realizing those ideas. And that's where I think we can play a really important role and really contribute to future generations.
Ladies and gentlemen, Michael Pawlyn, put your hands together for him. Thank you. Fantastic conversation. We look forward to having you in person in India very soon. Thank you very much.
Tata Power and News18 Network's SIA Fest saw leading influencers discuss and share insights into how we can together make sustainability a movement and truly engage every individual to adopt meaningful changes for a sustainable future.
Let's dive into the conversation, Rahul. For how many of us is sustainability personal?
Well, I think that climate change still remains a concept in most people's minds. Climate change still remains something that is an institutional problem. Climate change at best becomes a social problem, but it is an individual problem. So I think it's really worthwhile understanding how our lives are being impacted by climate change without us even knowing. So I'm on the ground. I've been working on this for the last 15, 17 years. So let me give you an idea of what's going on right now in terms of connections to make between problems and climate change. Everybody says climate change destroys livelihoods, increases violence. The question is how? Easy to say that. So in the Sundarbans, because the sea levels have risen and they have flooded the rivers, they've destroyed the fields. So first thing is the farmers have now become fishermen. So it's radically changed their way of life, their livelihoods. Entire villages, districts of India, and this has been happening for years, quietly move out of their villages and their districts for 6 months a year because there's no water. So they just go to another place. We don't even know about it. They actually migrate for 6 months without you even knowing. The brutality of climate change results in violence towards yourself, which you wreak because you don't eat enough, and which is wreaked on you by other people because of disasters. Then you begin to understand that this, and this is no exaggeration, this is today, is the greatest cause of human violence in the world.
Now, how do we make that cool? How do we make it good to talk about environment? How do we make it cool to talk about environment?
Most people younger than me, older than me, in my age group have the same question. Why me? Like, why do I have to talk about this?
Exactly. Yeah.
What difference can I make at my house? And that's when I realized that a lot of times, like Rahul mentioned, every time there's conversation happening about climate change, most of the younger people think that it's an institutional problem. The government's going to take care about it, policy change needs to happen, it's the bigger players who have the monies kept for CSR, you know, that's where it's all going to go. That's what a lot of young people think. Another thing is that every time conversations happen about climate change, they happen in a certain way, which is not easy for a huge chunk of our audience to understand. the concepts that are used in boardrooms travel from boardrooms to Instagram creatives and get lost there. Because let's be honest, how many of us always knew what SDG stands for?
Correct.
If I talk to my audience in the way that communication around climate change has been happening so far, I cannot get through to anybody. So that's where I found my place in the whole conversation, where I like to go to places like this, where I get to get this information, I get to learn about things, I get to meet people who are in positions of power, I get to be in rooms where parts of the problem and parts of the solution are together discussing things that matter to you and me, and break it into bite-sized pieces so we can make it consumable to a younger audience. I've always thought that through communication, through conversation, maybe it'll be easier if the youth today grows up looking at it as a lifestyle, looking at sustainability as a lifestyle and not as a lifestyle change.
My question to you is that when you make this music, people listen to the music.
Yeah.
They look at your message. But how many of them actually retain it? Do you really believe they retain it?
What happens is that right now, when it comes to all the environmental problems we face, they say that we've got a triple planetary emergency, we've got species extinction, we've got loss of biodiversity, air pollution, plastics pollution, climate change. The thing is that I believe that the biggest threat to all of us is the constant thought that we have that somebody else will make a difference. You know, at the end of the day, that is the thing. And the thing is that every single person on this planet, and I'm saying without exception, is aware of all the problems we face, maybe not at an analytical level, maybe not at a scientific level, but everybody is aware of all the problems that we face. Now, so the question is actually not about awareness right now. The question is about how do we convert this awareness into action. What we need to showcase to people is the relationship between action and consequence, basically. But what we don't do is that we don't look inwards. That if we do not have electricity for 5 minutes, we are so inconvenienced. If there's a new iPhone that comes out or a new gadget that comes out and they don't make enough of it and it goes out of stock, we are so inconvenienced. Why can't they make more of it? Now, where is all of that coal coming from for our electricity? Where is all that silica, manganese, iron ore, nickel, cadmium for those electronic gadgets coming from? It's coming from digging up those forests. So it's basically our consumption patterns which is destroying the food habitats of those elephants, and those elephants have no other alternative but to walk out for their food, and they go to a farmland, and the farmer has got no other choice but to make the punishable offense of actually protecting his or her family and protecting his or her livelihoods. So what we need to do is look inwards, and it's us artists who need to show a mirror in front of everybody to showcase that whatever problems are happening in this world, I have got a part to play in it, and what can I do to bring about a difference?
Would you agree that from the doom and gloom, positive reinforcement is a better way to approach aspects? Yes, you highlight the problem.
Obviously, I mean, there's no question. I mean, obviously.
So, but how do we bring about this positive reinforcement?
So
Let's talk about cinema.
Anybody who can use their hand, just do this. Okay? Yeah. Right. So, how many restaurants are there in Delhi? Anybody with a calculator? How many restaurants in Delhi? 10,000? Come on. Of all kinds. 10,000. How many seats in a restaurant in Delhi average? 50?
Yeah.
Is somebody punching this in? Yeah. We'll need this.
Yeah.
Please, can somebody punch this in? Yeah. So 10,000 into 50.
50,000. Yeah.
Wait. How many?
5 lakhs, sorry.
How many times a day will that 50 change in a restaurant? 3 times? Minimum?
Yeah.
15 lakhs.
So that's 150 seats. Okay, how many glasses of water in that restaurant? In 10,000 restaurants, into 50 into 3, is that many glasses of water?
Yeah.
How much in a glass of water? A quarter liter? 1/5 of a liter? 200 milliliters? So how many glasses will make a liter? Divide that entire amount by 5. That's how many liters of water? That's how many liters of water that are poured in front of you in 10,000 restaurants every day in Delhi. And how many of us drink it? It's tap water. How many of us drink it? 50%? How much have we saved by doing this?
Don't want it.
Over that glass.
Don't pour that glass. Don't pour that water. Yeah.
How much have we saved by just doing this? How much water will you save and how much energy will you save from the purification of that water on a daily basis? What is it? How many liters? Did anybody calculate?
Yeah, I think one gentleman was.
3,75,000 liters. It's half. There was a 7.5 lakh, that means.
Yeah.
So you would...
3,75,000 liters of water we'll save.
We'd save a day. Just by doing this. I don't want the water because I'm not going to drink it. And you're going to throw it away and it's going to go back into the cycle.
Yeah.
Just imagine, these are the ways that you can make profound change.
Now, how do we change this with the youth? Because research suggests that youth can be the biggest influencers, but they are perhaps also one of the biggest polluters.
Yeah.
So how do we change that?
I think first of all, let's just uncomplicate conversation around things. Let's just make it very, very, very simple. We really have underestimated the power of storytelling when it comes to issues that are, so definitely, and there's a lot of people today in the audience here where all of you all sit in these positions of power. You all sit in a position where communication begins. You have the influence to make sure that what leaves your channels can be monitored. So when you do that, make sure that it's simpler. Let's not put pie diagrams on Instagram. Nobody's watching it. And let's put things on Instagram. Let's put stories on Instagram. Let's put videos of people speaking up about things that have actually made a difference, things that have actually mattered to them on a more personal level.
Phenomenal, great, engaging conversation. Big round of applause to all three of them, please.
Music is a powerful tool to inspire change, and the SIA Fest saw a power-packed performance by 3-time Grammy Award-winning composer Ricky Cage, whose music is inspired by his passion and commitment to conserve the environment.
और सही है जो वो करे हम खड़े हो जिंदगी के साथ सब एक साथ यही है मौका यही है मौका
Tata Power and News18 Network are committed to make sustainable attainable. And the first edition of the SIA Fest saw people from all walks of life unite to collectively take action and lead the fight against climate change, reminding each of how sustainability is not just a buzzword, but a conscious choice we need to make every day to protect our planet, uplift communities, and secure a cleaner, greener, and more sustainable tomorrow for generations to come.